Hi, everybody. This is Go Tell, weekly lectionary exploration dialogue. Hope you're having a great day. So this is Tom.
Hi, this is Amelia.
And we're joining in the journey of Jesus and Peter with walking on the water.
So tell us the story, Tom.
All right. Well, when it was evening, immediately he made the disciples get into the boat and go across to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. He went mountain alone to pray by himself. So when it was evening, he was there alone on the land. But the disciples in the boat were way out, a long way from the land, beaten by the waves, for the wind was against them. And at the fourth watch of the night, Jesus came to them, walking on the water. And when they saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. And they said, it's a ghost. They cried out from fear. But Jesus said to them, "Take heart, I am. Don't be afraid." Peter said to him, "Lord, if it's really you, tell me to come to you on the water." And Jesus said, "Come." So Peter got out of the boat and he came to Jesus walking on the water. But when he saw the wind, he was afraid, and starting to sink, he cried out, "Lord, Lord, save me." And immediately Jesus reached out and caught him by the hand. And he said to him, "Ah, man of little faith, why did you doubt?" When they got into the boat, the wind ceased, and there was a great calm. And all those in the boat worshiped him and said, "Ah, you truly are the Son of God."
Thank you. Okay, back to the beginning of the story. Jesus is teaching this big crowd. He dismisses his disciples. They told him to get in the boat, go. He goes up on a mountain, and then it's something. At the fourth watch of the night, the boat was, I think you said, beaten by the waves.
When it was evening.
Oh, okay, all right. Yeah. Well, I think I wondered what those, like, the words were for beaten by the waves, like, and also fourth watch of the night. I don't know, some translations maybe have updated that, but that's what we've got, I guess. So talk a little bit about those particular words, if you would.
Well, it's really interesting. The word Matthew uses is basanidzo, which means to torture. And its primary associations are the torture that is associated with being really sick, with having lots of pain, with afflictions, that are, extremely distressful. So the associations that Matthew builds into this picture of the disciples and their experience of being beaten by the waves is of torture. And if you've ever been in a boat that was against the wind, it really is a kind of torturous thing. It's really frightening. And in the story, then, this thing in the evening is like 9 o'clock at night. The fourth watch is from 3 to 6 in the morning. And so they were trying to get across the sea for the whole night. And Jesus doesn't come to them until the fourth watch, which was like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning. So what is conveyed here is a nightmare kind of experience that the disciples were having in the boat, trying to get across the sea and not making progress and being beaten by the waves, so that they were out there all night long, tortured by the waves.
All right. That's a strong word. Yeah, associated with that. Okay, so he comes to them walking on the water, like some kind of a ancient Superman, I guess. So,
Yeah.
I mean, obviously that seems pretty significant, but what might we not understand, being 21st century persons, that they would have understood, those who first heard the story?
Well, the associations of walking on the water were of divine beings. It was a kind of theophany. So the images of God, walking on the water, on the powers of chaos, which was the association of these great storms and things. So in the ancient world, this picture of God, of Jesus walking on water, evokes associations with God, who walks on the powers of chaos and dominates them. So this is a kind of apocalyptic story that evokes the battle between the powers of good and evil. And so in this case, Jesus is walking as a sign of his control over the powers of chaos.
We could use some of that right now in these days. We've got a lot of chaos
Boy, it
going
really
on.
resonates.
Yeah.
It really resonates
Yeah,
with
it
our
does.
experience now.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay, so there were significant associations in the tradition and the culture with Jesus walking on the water. How about with Peter, he wants to do the same thing, but he ends up sinking. Are there associations with Peter sinking in the water?
Yeah, well, that's the fear of confronting the powers of evil. And in this case, the associations of Peter's sinking in the water are, things from the Psalms, from Psalm 18, 16 and 17. He reached down from on high. He took me, he drew me out of the mighty waters. Psalm 69, 2 and 3. Save me, O God, for the waters have come up to my neck. I sink in deep mire where there's no foothold. I've come into deep waters and the flood sweeps over me. So these associations of being, sinking into the water are associations of drowning. And of the, my dad, when he was 12, was a water boy for guys who were building a dam here near Dayton. And they threw him into the water, and he never got over his fear of the water after that, because he almost drowned. They let him, try to swim, and he couldn't do it. It's a really terrifying thing. Well, that's what is the terror associated with Peter's sinking in the water and being overwhelmed by the flood, by the powers of chaos. And it's hard to, it's probably, I don't know, it's really hard to convey in telling the story, the intensity of that experience, but that's what it's associated with.
Yeah, this story might invite people to think about their experiences of sinking in water, if they've had any. I mean, you're talking about your dad's experience made me think of a time when a friend of mine, this was up on Lake Superior in Canada, where we were camping. A friend of mine and I made a raft, and we were trying to go around this rocky point and started going out into Lake Superior. And I decided that was not a very good idea. We just had this pole, and it was not long enough now. So anyway, I jumped into the lake, which is very, very cold. And I remember just stopping swimming and starting to sink. I hadn't thought about that, but actually sinking. And my dad pulled me out. Yeah. So those of you who are listening, that's one way to get in touch with the dynamic of the story, is to think about what your life experience connections with it are. Okay. But getting back to a more exegetical approach here, let's see. When Jesus speaks to Peter, after he takes him by the hand, if you're telling the story, and that's our hope, is that you will learn it and tell it from the heart to your congregation or your family, whatever. You have to decide on how Jesus is going to say that line. Oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? So one possibility is, oh, you of little faith, why did you doubt? But do you want to, what are your thoughts about that, Tom, about how Jesus would have been a tone of judgment like that, or disgust, or is there some other possibility there for how Jesus might have been, you think he might have been speaking to Peter, and hence to us when we have our own doubts?
Yeah. Well, I've heard it many times read, "Oh, man of little faith, why did you doubt?" And that, I think, is utterly foreign, alien to the spirit of Jesus. I think the way in which he is more like a coach. When a kid is screwed up and something, and taking him by the hand and standing there on the water. Okay, man of little faith, why did you doubt? And so it's an invitation to reflect, to think about, okay, why did I lose it? I was walking on, what happened when I started to pay attention? And of course, what happens in the story is he starts paying attention to the wind and the powers of chaos, rather than keeping his attention focused on Jesus. So it's a kind of existential experience of the issues of faith, of keeping one's focus on God and not being then distracted by or preoccupied with the chaos news of the day, which is my temptation virtually every day now.
Yeah, that is making me think of a pretty strong connection with another gospel story that I happened to have told yesterday, so it's obviously why I thought of it. But the story of Mary and Martha. So, Mary's sitting at Jesus's feet, paying attention to what he's saying. And Martha, however, is worried and distracted, busy with a whole lot of stuff she's doing. And Jesus says to her when Martha objects, you know, Martha, you are worried and distracted by many things. There's need of only one thing. And, you know, Mary's chosen the better part and it won't be taken away from her. So that's a real similar theme. Very different scenario, but don't allow the things that are happening right at the moment to be a distraction from really what's most important and the security that we do have in God and in Christ. Okay.
Yep.
Next question.
All about attention.
All about attention. Right. Doubt. So what does doubt mean here?
Well, I think doubt means being distracted, not paying attention, not of losing focus, losing faith. It's not about doubting doctrinal truths or the kind of intellectual doubt. It's about the doubt of the moment. That in the time of stress, that there is the possibility of keeping one's attention focused, but losing that concentration, losing focus of attention, that's doubt. That's doubting the moment, doubting God's ability, your ability to move forward.
Where else in, particularly in Matthew, is doubt come up? And also, I think you were going to maybe tell us what that word is in, I don't know, in Greek.
Yeah, well, at this second, I don't remember I think it's distazo.
That's what you told me. So it sounds good.
Okay. Okay. Well, the other place where that occurs is at the appearance of Jesus after the resurrection on the mountain. You know, it says that Jesus came to him and many rejoiced, many of the disciples rejoiced seeing the Lord, but some doubted. That is, they didn't sure that this was really Jesus.
Okay. Okay. I know. Another thing is, and I don't know that we've talked about this before, but especially when stories are told, I don't think this happens so much when they're read, but when you tell the stories to people so that you're looking at them, you're connecting with them, people often identify, you know, it's like they're being talked to in a certain way. So in this case, who would people tend, you know, in the audience tend to be identifying with, do you think?
At the beginning of the story, the invitation is to identify with the disciples out in the boat. And then it is with Peter, seeing Jesus on the sea. They were all terrified. Peter apparently wasn't so terrified. If it's really you, tell me to come to you. So he overcomes his fear, but then he is, as happens with me, at least, every day now, distracted by the wind, by the powers of chaos that seem to be taking over, and starts to sink. So I think the invitation of the story is to identify and to experience this as Peter experienced it.
Yeah. Okay, one last question. Back up in a part of the story we kind of skipped over. When Jesus, when he's walking on the water and the disciples see him, they're really terrified. And he reassures them by saying, I think you said, I am. But you know, a lot of times, I believe in the NRSV, at least, it says, it is I. Jesus says, don't be afraid, it is I. You said, I am. Now, why did you choose to, I mean, is that a legitimate translation? And why did you choose to translate it that way?
In the story of the burning bush, when Moses asks, if I go to the people and say that the God of Isaac and of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob sent me to you, what shall I say? God's response in the Septuagint translation of the Hebrew is ego eimi. When Jesus he says, do not be afraid, ego eimi. So it is I is a perfectly legitimate grammatical translation, but it does not carry with it the associations with the divine word, the divine name that is present in Exodus. And clearly that is intended, is that Jesus walking on the water is God. And so this is a theophany. It is a time in which Jesus, and so I think that to translate it as it is I does not convey that association and that deep meaning of Jesus as a divine figure.
Wow. So there's actually in the Greek the same words.
Same words.
God said to Moses and to Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh, well, that's a powerful connection then. Great. Okay, well, that's what we have for you today for this wonderful, fantastic, relatively well-known story, I guess, coming up this next Sunday in the lectionary. Hope you have a good week. I do want to mention, we just had the annual festival gathering of the Network of Biblical Storytellers this past Thursday and Friday, which was all virtual. We weren't sure how it'd go, but it was absolutely amazing. You want to say just like one or two things about that, Tom?
Well, the thing that was most striking about it was that it was an international event. And so there was one time in the discussion in one of the workshops when there was a person from who was leading it, who was from Canada, and speaking to somebody in response in Australia, in India, and then there were greetings and leadership in the worship service, George Vimensi Menang in Cameroon. So it was just an astonishing experience of people from all over the world being together in the same place. And there was a lot of grief among people, missing the person-to-person contact. But the astounding thing was this experience of everybody being together from all over the world. And it was great.
Yeah. So there has been some good things, new possibilities that have come out of this very difficult time due to the pandemic.
Yeah.
All right. Well, truly, I'm signing off now. Bye, everybody.
Bye.